Hello ladies and gentlemen, Dave Dobbs here. It's the 3rd of February 2024 and again apologies I haven't made a video in such a long time. Well, I can't say I haven't made a video in such a long time. I've actually been remarkably busy trying to process a lot of stuff, trying to get ready for a whole new series of videos, and obviously I've set up this Patreon account and I really want to give you guys a load of content, and I know I haven't given you a lot, although I have delivered you the latest Dobbs model, the latest 2024 Dobbs model with all of your date of births lined up on that, and that's what I want to talk about. There's a lot I want to talk about today because we're going to talk about that. I'm going to run the new model through this video, and so you're all going to have the where the planets were in a very different system to what you've come to know. And we're going to explore, we're going to open up with just some of the latest sighting. We're going to be kind of moving through it all, but there's lots and lots of what I want to discuss really. And I talked about before in my last video about the Arc of Heaven, and it's something my father drew my attention to with, I think it's got the name of it there, the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus the Christ, Dowling. And it's a very different account to Jesus's life to what you've been kind of told in the biblical sort of story. It was channeled in 1844, which is at a very interesting time because that's pretty much the same time we discovered Neptune. So we were right next to the big blue object, and we're going to discuss all of that as well. But when this was actually channeled by a guy called Levi Dowling, and I'm just going to read you this little bit actually, because I found it really, because I think this is the time that we are in right now. And so because my father was quite fascinated when I showed him my model, and I showed him, just to show you, from 1939, the year the Second World War began, just so you know what I'm talking about. When I told my dad I think this is the Arc of Heaven, see Jupiter here. Obviously this isn't as you understand it in the standard model, but this is getting close to understanding what it is to be, this current model I'm working with. And going from 1939, Jupiter crosses Earth's path, and goes right round the Sun and comes back round. And then you go to the next year and you see Earth is slightly forward and it comes to the same place, but Earth has gone pretty much one calendar month forward. And it keeps coming like that, and then Earth is slightly further forward, and the next year, have I gone past it? See how Earth is, and we're going to start meeting up at this point here, to just at the end of the war, the end of the Second World War, and that is the Arc of Heaven, when Jupiter is coming. This whole system and our Sun are so close to each other that the moons of this object, or the planets orbiting this object, get drawn into our Sun and go right round and do a loop round our Sun. And we have been going through the same Arc of Heaven since about 2018, 2019. When do we start syncing up again? Around about 2006 there. That was one time, but we weren't all on the same ecliptic plane then. We'd have to go through to around about a bit further. Yeah, it's more like 2018 really, and you're going to see all of this. So from about there to 2023-24. I think it's personally going to be this year, because we had 61 volcanoes going off in August, July, and obviously in October, November, we had about 51 volcanoes simultaneously going off. That's just unprecedented. In all the time I've observed all these volcanoes going off, made incredible predictions based on the patterns that we see, and try to obviously build all these different astronomical models based on the sightings and the patterns. But when we get these long duration volcanoes, when an object is coming in, not from underneath and then going and coming out of the top, but actually coming in on the same ecliptic plane as all the planets move orbiting around our sun. And so we end up with these long duration volcanoes going off, and that's what we've been seeing since, well, the first one was May the 4th 2018, the big Kilauea eruption in Hawaii that went off for about 6 weeks non-stop. And then since that time we've had quite a lot, right up till 2021 we had really long duration volcanoes, and then they started subsiding. And now we're getting to the other point where everything is now, where if it was coming in from below the ecliptic plane and coming out the top, during that period I just discussed, it was coming in on the same ecliptic plane. And if an object, like I say, before was coming in from below, it's going to start just beginning to come in from the top now, and vice versa. All those objects that were coming in from the top, and it does seem that these vary depending on their kind of orbits as these two objects became closer and closer. Herculobis, as I call it here, which was the name that Carlos Ferrada gave the system when he predicted the massive earthquake that would occur on the 20th of January 1939 in Chile. And he said millions, or not millions, but thousands of people would die. But it would affect, it would affect the globe. It would be a massive event, and millions were affected, and thousands of people died, and it was a massive earthquake that happened pretty much exactly when he said, in the exact location he predicted, based on the movements of this big blue object. So when I'm talking about the arc of heaven, that is what I'm understanding. That's why I think, because much of the text, when I look at much of the text, and I've been reviewing these this Aquarian Gospel of Christ, and I've been reviewing the Emerald Tablets, Thoth's, the translation or the channeled understanding of the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, and which ironically is a very similar story. And there's this kind of an idea that there's this door that opens to humanity periodically, and if you don't go through this door at that time, then you have to wait till the next time it comes. Even though you may knock on that door, if that door's open to you and that's available to get through, it doesn't mean it's always open. And we are not coming to the point where the door is opening now. We are coming to the point where the door is finally completely closing. And that is going to be because we can expect, just by the patterns, since 2018, around about July-August period, we've just watched the storms get exponentially bigger, the volcanoes get exponentially more frequent. The storms get the storm systems that have been coming in as I've described. In 2018 it was like the worst storm since since 1998, certainly in the southern provinces of China. But we see incredible what we would consider to be biblical flooding all around the globe, and we saw that in 2018, and there was, the Chinese were certainly saying it was the worst storm since '98, and then 2019 it was the worst storm since 1930, since the discovery of Pluto, and then 2020 it became the worst storm for 1,000 years, and 2021 it was the worst storm in record. I might be but that one might have been 2022, so I might be a year out on that, actually a year behind on all that. But certainly 2023. Certainly 2023, the storms were just as big in China, except that they were further north. They were up in Beijing, not in the Sichuan province and in the southern provinces of China around the Yangtze River. It was much further. It was not much further, but it was considerably further, which is exactly what I was saying, that this is going to start affecting the northern hemisphere. And didn't we have an incredible flooding in the northern hemisphere, the most amazing storms, and we're watching the fault line underneath the Atlantic, the mid-Atlantic ridge, now getting really excited, which is where the Iceland volcano sits. It's where Iceland sits, right on that ridge, and we've been seeing obviously all the volcanoes going off there, and the kind of and the heating up of the Atlantic and the massive storms that happen as a result of everything that's been going on in the Pacific is now coming up to start really affecting the Atlantic, and so we've just had our most incredible flyby. But before I go on with this astronomical model, I don't want to try and make you think I'm going down this kind of road of Bible bashing here, because I'm really not. The truth be told, when I read the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus, it reminded me so much of the of my own book, Laughing Gas, which I'm going to read. That's what I'm going to be loading up to my Patreon account, because I wrote it for this time, and everything is all about what's happening right now, which is why I wrote it in preparation for these times, to deal with these times and to help us deal with these times. But of course, when I wrote it, it was such a heavy thing to talk about all these things. What would happen if we left Europe, and the massive confrontation that's going to come between Europe or is going to be attempted to push between Europe and Russia, to feed Europe into a war with Russia, and then to make this massive war happen between in the Middle East, and basically plunge the whole world into a massive war. And I was plagued with why I had to see this, and why I kept having these visions about this, and that's why I wrote Laughing Gas, to go on a pilgrimage and trying to work out what was happening and why I was getting this message. And I was ultimately told that don't worry about your Earth. Unprecedented peace will be waged on your planet, on your Earth. But you all have to go on this journey to see why this is happening, and what is really subverting humanity and subverting this planet right now, and see how this can all be predicted when you start understanding what's really going on this plane, and why all this can be predicted. Anyway, my dad gave me this. He read this out to me at Christmas, and I was so perplexed, because, like I say, it's a very different account. The whole story of Jesus here, as I talked about in my last video, is, he went off and he was basically educated by all the big kind of faiths all around the globe, or certainly he certainly went out to Tibet, and he certainly went to India, and he certainly went to Europe, and he certainly went to Egypt, and he certainly went to Persia, and it seems he went a lot further. He went further afield from that, and he was with the Zoroastrians, the Buddhists, he was with the Brahmin, he was with the he was with all the Greek philosophers, he was in like I say, he was in Persia, and obviously that's where the kind of Zoroastrian faith kind of comes from, but obviously that's in India and Persia. And so he was received by all these faiths that were expecting him to come, and they taught him their ways, and he taught them his ways and his teachings. And so there was a massive exchange, and he did incredible healing. And like I say, by the time he turned up to do his whole thing that he was here to do, which was die, and then certainly in this account was for him to die, and then to rise up after his death, and show that there is life beyond this. That you can take this human life to a much higher place and keep it going in higher realms. You don't have to just die and stay in the loop of war and pain and suffering and greed. You can rise your vibration and take this whole life process further to another realm, to higher realms. And so let me just read you this little bit, because this is going to be a bit of a prep, and it's just it is what it is. It's a very, very different account. In Glastonbury, obviously my hometown, it's very much a everyone talks about about Joseph of Arimathea, and the whole kind of story of how he arrived in Glastonbury back in the day, some say before he was crucified, and some say after he was crucified. But there's all these tales that are very different to the kind of the very hard-nosed kind of beliefs of of your regular Christians, who have a very different kind of who I think have a very different idea of the story, and believe somehow that he died to rid you of your sins. And that's not what this says. It says nothing can do that for you. Yes, you can confess your sins, or it doesn't even say confess. It says that when you kind of acknowledge and you own your mistakes, as in when you are truthful about what you've really done, and you can really look at it, you can transmute that and you can work through that. But if you can't look at that, then the universe is going to drag you through that and force you to confront that in a very physical, abrupt way, in the way in which you potentially made whatever might be considered, you know, a sin or a bad move in your eyes, or in through the eyes of maybe a higher God or whatever, you know. But it's really not the case that he died to clean you of your sins. That's not this story at all. It's you know, you've got to take care of that. You know, you've got to kind of clean your own house. And the disciples asked, "When will this desolation come?" And Jesus said, "This round of human life will not be full until the armies of the conqueror will thunder at her gates, and they will enter in, and the blood will flow like water through the streets. When you shall hear the Roman eagle screaming in the air, and see his legion streaming over the plain, you know the desolation of Jerusalem is near. And signs that men will never see will appear in the heaven and earth, in sun, moon and stars. The sea will roar, and sounds will come from the heaven that men can never comprehend, and these will bring distress of nations with perplexity. Hearts of the strongest men will faint in fear, in expectation of the coming more frightful things upon the earth. But while the conflicts rage on land and sea, the Prince of Peace will stand above the clouds of heaven and say again, 'Peace, peace on earth, goodwill to men,' and every man will throw away his sword, and nations will learn war no more. And then the man who bears the picture will walk forth across an arc of heaven. The sign and signet of the Son of Man will stand forth in the eastern sky. The wise men will lift up their heads and know that the redemption of the earth is near. Before these days shall come, behold, false Christs and poor deluded prophets will rise in many lands, and they will show forth signs and do a multitude of mighty works, and they will lead astray the many who are not wise, and many of the wise will be deceived. And now I tell you once again, when men shall say, 'The Christ is the wilderness,' go you not forth. And if they say, 'The Christ is in the secret place,' believe it or not, for when he comes the world will know that he has come. For as the morning light comes from the east and shines unto the west, so shall be the coming of the age and the Son of Man. The wicked of the earth will weep, for they shall see the Son of Man come down upon the clouds of heaven in power. Take heed you, O take heed, for you know not the hour nor the day when comes the Son of Man. Prepare you, O prepare, the Prince of Peace shall come, and now is coming on the clouds of heaven." So now, sorry about that kind of, it sounds quite a religious rant, but when you actually read this text, it's something that if you're expecting your kind of normal story of Jesus, yeah, it's kind of got lots of aspects of what you've come to know in the Bible, but it tells such a different story. And so what I'm going to be doing is on my I'm not trying to say that this story is the story of Jesus, but nonetheless there's this death process that goes on in Laughing Gas, where Dobbs is invited to experience a death process during an ayahuasca ceremony, and he goes through to what I'm understanding is the big blue object, the fifth dimension, what we would sometimes refer to as heaven, although I'm understanding there are kind of multiple heavens, because heaven depends on what's heaven for you. And you know, heaven means different things to different people, and there's lots of different there's lots of different places that you can go to beyond the fifth dimension. Certainly in this story, the Aquarian Gospel of Jesus, he dies and goes through to the realm of the dead, the realm of souls that exist beyond life, beyond the actual physical third dimension. And he goes there, and his process seems to go there first of all. It's very, very kind of like akin to the tale of you know, the film. It's called the Golden Compass, the Northern Lights. can't think of the author now, Philip Pullman's book where the Lyra journeys to the realm of souls after death, and they free them from the realms, and she goes through and in this story he needs to die in his earth body to go through to that realm, and he apparently frees them. That's what it says at the end here. It says he frees them from this prison, that they've been led into a prison because of their greed and because of the negative aspects that have been pushed up, have been kept going in humanity, with kind of like through greed and through basically forms of slavery, and turning us against each other constantly, and dividing us at every juncture, and forcing us into being angry, into being greedy, into being nasty, into being cruel, into being selfish, and all these negative things that keep us trapped. So we can't take our existence on this planet to a higher place, because we've had to work through a lot of stuff through these many lives, and raise our vibrations, and learn better ways of doing things, kinder ways of doing things, and to become nicer beings. And so that's what so I'm gonna release Laughing Gas, because I wrote it for these times. Everything that's going on now is now happening. It's so bizarre to read this, and I realise that, like I say, it's time for me to release that. So that's one of the things I'm going to be releasing, and I've been recording some of the chapters, doing voiceovers, trying to practice the reading of Laughing Gas in preparation for releasing it. Now, in the last before I go through and run through the model again, so everyone's got their kind of, so we can all kind of look at where the planets were exactly. In this current model, this is not to say this is correct. This is the best I can do to kind of correct all the old mistakes of past, and there's still more mistakes in there. It's still not perfect, but it's a beginning of an understanding, and it's also it's an understanding of the direction your sun moves in the scheme of things, which most people don't currently have. They don't visualize the sun moving forward through time and space, and all the planets working around the moving sun. And so this is going to be for those of you who are looking at this for the first time. You're going to be seeing a very different system, and try not to believe it or not. Try not to allow doubt to come into this equation, because if you're looking at this as if it's right or wrong, you're coming at it from the wrong way, because it will never be right. No matter how much observation we can give to the movements of the universe, we will always be able to make corrections to how we see and perceive things, and to advance our understanding of its movements. So this is just the beginning point. This is my probably about 7th, 8th model of developing this. So it's changed all the way through this as I've learned to develop and use more complex programs to understand. But nonetheless, it's just a beginning of a visualization where, as I talked about in the last video, if you decide to join me, not necessarily in person, but join me in a pilgrimage on the 21st of June. 21st of June represents, as I'm understanding, the exact forward motion of our sun. When we're in front of the sun on the 21st of June, we are right at the front direction of the sun in its motion forward. And to align with that place, and to picture yourself aligned with the universe, and the sun charging forward, and to connect with that, and to connect with your place in the universe, and is a massive, you can't be a cosmic being if you cannot connect to the cosmos. And if you're in a small story that is not connected to the real story you're in, it's not a true shamanic process. And I'm not suggesting that I'm absolutely right with my forward motion, but nonetheless, how many of you actually have had, before you've actually spent time watching my channel, how many of you have really spent time considering the movement of your sun in the scheme of things, and where your sun is going in conjunction to the earth moving around, and the kind of entrance and exit corridors that you would expect of an object moving forward, a primary like our sun moving forward, and objects that are going to be drawn in to come across that front end, and the different forces that would be at play. You know, certainly as you're coming up and you're going to go round, there's a point where you're all travelling at very similar speed. So the centrifugal force of you going round an object becomes less because you're travelling relative to the object slower. And so you draw much closer to the primary that's being orbited at that point when you're coming up and you're going round, and then you're going across the front edge of it. And of course you're much closer, you're going much faster. The perihelion, or if it's something coming around the earth like the moon, it's perigee point, this kind of this close point. And then you're going to be going round and going the opposite way of the object, which means that the centrifugal force is going to throw you so much further away from the primary which you orbit. All of these ideas we don't really incorporate in our nice little pretty standard model with the sun in the middle and all the planets going round in a perfect circle. None of it works in an astronomical model. The whole thing falls apart. It only works if you have a static sun. The standard model only works as you understand it, with a static sun. As soon as you add movement, everything falls apart. So let's just now come to, before I go here, let's just explore where this range of shots is going to cover. We're just going to go to the new model, and we're just going to come now to, that's 2024. So we're talking about we're running from here. There's the Earth here. We're going from here, and we've had this object coming through, and then we are coming to around here, and notice that we are getting these objects, Charon and what I call Charon and Kerberos, coming in there. And even now I'm looking and I'm seeing the type of shots that I wasn't expecting. You know, I could, these proportions of these may be incorrect, and so, like I say, that the model is still far from perfect, but nonetheless it's giving us still a ballpark understanding that where last year you know, in my previous model to this, I obviously showed Kerberos and Charon coming past, and we've got so many shots, and we're going, like I said, we're going to go through the whole model, and we're going to look at my previous videos, and we're going to go through the whole model again. So it's going to take a while, but then, you know, you can follow that, you can follow me through that, obviously, but also you can just scan up and down that whole model and find your date of birth and friends' date of birth, and we can talk about how we can look at that and translate that and think about that. Like I say, not to see if it's right or wrong, but just to start considering some of these other astronomical influences that you've never brought into your chart. This kind of idea of this forward motion and the comings in and the goings out and all the other interactions. We're going to try and cover so much in this video, and this cosmic 21st of June. This coming up this year, this alignment to coming together and to begin the celestial journey of being aware and look and being there for the 21st of June, for the sunrise, and beginning the process of the pilgrimage of arriving at wherever you're going to arrive for that time on that date, and start opening and start aligning with that journey now. Like when you're going off to see an eclipse or something, you have to start preparing, and cosmic miracles start happening, as I talked about in my last video, or whatever cosmic journey how many of you have gone off on a journey with divine intention to go into a ceremony or something, or to go and commune with what you perceive to be God, or to go off to a celestial event with a kind of a feeling of cosmic connection and opening that door. And I've noticed that when you open those doors and you have that cosmic connection, miracles start to happen and things start helping you in your journey, because you've got clear intention of what you're trying to do and where you're trying to be and what you're trying to create. So this is, I want you to be using this information for a cosmic journey, for alignment and for awareness and for open expansiveness, to bring about an understanding of your place in the scheme of things and your direction in the scheme of things. You know, that's what you want to be getting out of this, a form of direction, a form of cosmic alignment. And so that's really what I want you to sort of remember. So we've got that there. So let's go now to this shot here, and this shot here was posted by Mr. MBB on 333 on the 13th of January 2024. Ironically, this is exactly when, you know, the big Icelandic volcano, it went off in late December, and then it went off in early January. Went off about the 12th, I think, the 12th of January. But I just thought this was an absolutely incredible shot, because we could look up and we could assume that those are clouds. But if I told you that they weren't clouds, if I told you that that was the surface of a massive planet that was right next to us, going past us, and that these effects are much more caused by by electromagnetic energy and the heat of the sun, when this object here, or potentially the one that's furthest forward, it will be the furthest one forward. So it's more likely I've got these the wrong way round, actually, when I see it, that this is the one that's first and this is the one that's second. But as the pair have come in, because we've got lots of shots of the pairs, and we've seen them at these times of this time of year, at the February-March period many times, and so this is what we see. Excuse the exact proportions of this, because, like I say, to try and get it all, to try and get 1800 years into a model, and to try and align it all up has been a hell of a task. And trying to find a way to get a window on all of this and bring it all together has been a hell of a task. But we are going to explore that more. But that is what, I'm not saying this is what this shot is. I'm not saying that's what this shot. I'm not saying that that's what this shot absolutely is, but that's what I'm of a mind it is. See how all these lines interact. See, you know, this has happened as this thing has gone so close to the sun, its whole surface gets melted. This is the object itself. This is one of the twins. This is the surface of one of the twins coming so close to us, causing the volcano to go off whilst it's being so close. Unbelievable. Or every shot here, I'm afraid, is going to be unbelievable. Everything I'm going to show you, and yet I've managed to predict volcanoes so accurately through this, you know, over and over again. Showed you the most incredible flybys, predicted them to the day, over and over and over and over and over again. And it's difficult to look at, but that object is right up there. So this was a shot. This was a very contemporary shot. This was posted on February the 2nd. So this was yesterday, and this was again Mr. MBB 333, and he's just showing. Someone sent him a shot from the ISS and said, "What is this big red cloud that the ISS seems to be in?" Well, you know exactly what it is. It's the tail of these objects. So we're very close to these objects. We're not going to be so close to them as we were last year. I'm of mind. I might be completely wrong there. It might be the other way around. But I'm of mind that we've pretty much done these flybys now. Even though we're close to it, as close to it as what we're going to get, basically. But we're going to see. We're coming out of the activity now. I think, you know, it obviously could be that we get plunged straight into the tail and get loads of red dust come down, and it could be pretty massive. And certainly we're seeing all the kind of like telltale signs, like green asteroids and green asteroids coming through, which are slow moving objects, and so they're not burning off everything in a white glow. They're not traveling fast enough to burn everything off. So they're It's like a do they call it spectrometer? Is it a spectrometer that burns off? You see what elements are there by raising the temperature higher and higher and higher, and seeing the colours that burn off, and seeing using spectrometry, if I've said that correct, to kind of like see which elements are present in a compound and a mixture. That shot, amazing shot. That was the 30th of September 2023, and Brandon Corey Nagley posted that. And just remembering where we were back in September. This is the big blue object, Jupiter, coming through. So this is, we're gonna, in my opinion, it's gonna be, like I say, this time next year it's gonna be even bigger. We had 61 volcanoes going off here. Just an incredible one. I can remember, like I say, in sort of like about 2019, going to an Extinction Rebellion gathering where they were just organising kind of what they were going to do in terms of protests and demonstrations, and they had a big meeting, and I went along to it, and I presented these whole ideas through the People's Assembly that they run. And the People's Assembly, like I said in my last video, absolutely amazing. But I said, how can you have truth and carbon zero in the same sentence? Because that's their first two goals. I think the first one is carbon zero, and the second one is truth. And I'm like, well, look, when you've got volcanoes spewing out the type of carbon dioxide that they're spewing now, and seeing the volume that were going to go off, and I'd said that a load of volcanoes were going to go off in September, and sure enough, loads of volcanoes went off exactly as I predicted. And just like the previous year when I'd come to America on the day of the flyby, and not that we were getting the big volcanoes then, but certainly we were. It was we hadn't started with all the long duration volcanoes. All the volcanoes were single bursts. The objects were, when they were coming in, they were coming from above or below, cutting through the ecliptic plane and going above. So they were just a flash. As now we're getting a very different thing. Now we're getting, like I say, objects coming in pretty much on the ecliptic plane. So that was that shot, and we knew it was going to come in, and it had gone into the night sky just as we expected, and we were going to see the big blue object up here in the night sky. And there it was. So that was a brilliant shot by Brandon Corey Nagley, who's not posting that much at the moment because bless his mum's been diagnosed with a tumour. Bless her little cotton sock. So sorry to hear about that. And so he's been dealing with his mum, and his dad's not been very well, I think. I saw in some of the comments. So but yeah, but he's still, he's one of the most incredible sky watchers, and he just finds so many of the shots that I put up, as does Mr. MBB333, who religiously posts, and so many people send him data, and I just can't do that side of things as he does. I spend my time kind of like putting all this stuff into models and trying to make sense of it and make sense of all these things, because I think that we can make sense of it. But this was, when was this article? So this was on December the 23rd, but like I say, it happened again around about the 11th, 12th, 13th of January as well. And so we've been watching that, and that's the pair, the two flybys, one and then the next. And so, oh sorry, this one was no doubt the what was I going to say? It was the first eruption would have more likely been this object here, the red. I call the red Kachina coming across here. So that's the December volcano, the December eruption, and then we come to the latter part, which here I've got them cutting in here, but clearly they are. These could be, this object itself could be much further towards Mars here, that they're all orbiting, and so it's very, very difficult to get the cycles and the proportions of all that, because it's a little bit unknown, and you can imagine we're trying to squeeze it all into one kind of into one picture. So the timings, but it's you know, it is what it is. It's the best I can do, really, and to try and understand the kind of like, so we can understand what's going to happen in you know, these drop back a month every year. So next year this object will be at the same time here, and then the next year after that will be here, as this object goes forward a month every year. So if it's here, say this year, next year it's going to be much further forward. It's going to be over here, and so that was, you know, we've certainly seen all the activity. We're certainly seeing these most incredible shots that we'd expect to see in the sky at these times. That was December the 23rd, you know, and we knew this thing was we're running parallel to it, and we're just getting closer and closer and closer and closer, and then it crosses the path and goes towards the sun. And so we were just been getting closer and closer and closer until we were, like I say, until we were right next to it. That was, again, Brandon Corey Nagley on the 23rd of December. This was 24th of December, and we see literally the pair. That was World of Signs, an incredible shot. Now, maybe I'm wrong here. Maybe these were just normal lenticular clouds, because he shows other lenticular clouds in this shot. And sure, they could just be. But isn't it funny how I predict these things that you're going to see at this time? And like I say, last year, these came with the big kind of like the big Turkey earthquakes. And I said you're going to see one, and then you're going to see the other. And sure enough, there they came. The massive earthquakes in Turkey. Incredible shots of these things. And obviously, you know, most of us can't move through our beliefs on this, unfortunately. But that was posted Brandon Corey Nagley. By Brandon on the 27th of December, the day after Boxing Day. Incredible shot. There's a few interesting shots there, actually. A couple of Soho shots. Now that was on the 28th of December, and you know that we're getting closer and closer. We're going to be right next to this thing to get to, like I say, to get to that shot. But that is. World of Science posted that. Quite a few people posted that. Nibiru followers posted that. And I saw there was quite an interesting discussion with that on Nibiru, whatever I just said now, the name of the channel, Nibiru followers, and the lady who runs it. I can't remember her name actually, but she did a very interesting chat with Sam Hoffman, who's got some very interesting theories and runs these ideas of models also. You know, and I'm not trying to say I'm right. I'm definitely not trying to say he's wrong. You know, he was one of the first people who really helped me see some of these massive flybys and get a window on them. And just, you know, you have got to be taken by the hand a little bit to see these things and to see the massiveness of what we're dealing with. You know, and that was posted. Yeah, Brandon obviously put it on his channel. That was an interesting shot. World of Signs on the 7th of January. We know we're getting close to it. You know, you could say that's the aurora borealis, but obviously it's a very unusual kind of configuration of lights and gases. That's the tail of this object, and the swirls that exist as a result of it being in the night sky there, coming in towards us, coming in from the night sky, and you're just seeing aspects of its tail being affected by the gravity of Earth. World of Signs on the 14th of January 2024. That, I'm of mind, is Jupiter heading back in now. You know, like I say, I've got that crossing coming across there, and actually I'm of mind that's already crossed and is heading. It's a very you know, understanding our solar system and what's really going on here. It's almost like our system is much smaller than this system, really, overall. And so we're struggling to really kind of get a proportion of the size of this system, and the speed of rotations is correct, but the circumference and the ratios. But nonetheless, this is the best I can do it right now, and get it all onto the same page, and that's the real challenge, I'm afraid. So, but I'm of mind that you're looking at it more from Earth. This would have actually crossed our path again now, and we would be over here looking at it. But I've got it further forward there, and it's simply because of the proportions of this. And you're going to have to think about that when you're kind of considering the zodiac as well, and have ways of kind of like getting your head around that. And you know, it's just the beginning ballpark of beginning to understand the bigger picture of what we're really seeing, even though it's over the top. So, you know, incredible shots. That was World of Signs. You know, incredible things in the sky, and these things are up there, and that's the whole tale of this thing. That's what you're seeing when we're calling the aurora borealis, and there's the aurora borealis, the same thing we're seeing at night, and now we're seeing it directly between the sun and Earth, and all this crazy colour it stirs up as a result of all these strange gases in the tail. It's incredible. That's again World of Signs. He posted that on the 11th of Jan, pretty much the same time as the volcanoes were going off in Iceland. So that was a shot that Mr. MBB 333 posted on the 11th of Jan, and someone just saw this incredible light in the night sky, and I said, look out for it. You can see an incredible light in the night sky. You know, as one of the twins comes in for the big flyby, and whilst the big flyby was coming in, that's the next one of the pair that's coming in now. And this is going to be the last flyby until the big blue one passes us again in August, September. So after this little flyby here, which I'm of a mind is coming in now, we're certainly seeing. That's why I believe the ISS is clouded in a red haze at the moment of iron dust, iron ore dust from this. That's what this sun spews out. Where our sun spews out helium, it turns hydrogen into helium. It spews out helium. This is spewing out iron. That's how dense this thing is. That's an incredible shot. Again, Mr. MBB 333 on the 16th of Jan. What I'm expecting to see. The sun's obviously behind it and it's capturing the whole tail, and that's the object. That was posted 2 months ago on November the 23rd, and then you're literally just getting you're literally seeing both the red and the blue object. November. So we're literally seeing this object and this object, and I know I haven't got the proportions of that quite right, but it's, I'm of mind we're just about seeing both of those, or we're seeing, no, I think it's both of those. Obviously I might be completely wrong, and it could be that we're actually getting a glimpse of the big, whatever this object that they all orbit, whether that's a dwarf planet itself, big red dwarf planet itself, or quite what this is difficult to say. You know, this is, you know, from all of the observations, to try and make sense of it overall. And you're going to see a lot more of that as we go through the whole model, and you can kind of come to your own date of birth and what was potentially going on, or getting a kind of a ballpark understanding of what was your biggest influence at the time that when you arrived, because some of you arrived here from Earth. Some of you died on Earth and you were reborn on Earth, and you're in an Earth story. And this whole story is, this whole time, if you're an Earth being and you've been on Earth for a very long time, then there's a doorway opening to you to become part of a bigger system. And that's what this represents, this arc of heaven, our second Earth, which is Jupiter, the real Jupiter, as in Galileo's Jupiter that he would have seen in 1613, massive and blue. And we're going to come to some epic shots as we go through. Like I say, when we go through the whole timeline and we just run it, and we just kind of like stop to think about some of the flybys that have happened over just in our little epoch, our local epoch, since 2011, sort of 12, when all this really started, when Fukushima went bang, the nuclear power stations all went up, the tsunami came in, when the media was telling us, oh, those 2012ers, they got it all wrong, nothing happened, and we're just supposed to watch on as a massive tsunami occurs, nuclear power stations go into meltdown, and so begin, after that point, the most incredible set of flybys, many of which I'm going to show you in this video. So we're going to... so it's difficult to say exactly what that is. It's like the red one and the blue one come into view at the same time, and we've had a lot of shots of those together. That shot again, this was a few people, Brandon Corey Nagley posted this, and I think a few others have posted it. Maybe even Mr. MBB333 posted this as well. But that was just quite recently. So this is this second object now coming into view, the second of the pairs coming into view now. Obviously that could be the Jupiter planet coming into view, and that coming in for its flyby and just becoming visible. Again, difficult to say, but there's an incredible sighting of a massive object in the night sky. People are getting pictures of it. Lots of anomalous shots coming in. There's lots of this stuff going on. The shots coming in from all over at the moment. I just saw, you know, that 6 hours ago the US launched a huge wave of strikes against Iran-backed groups in Iraq and Syria overnight. So it's really stepping up the fighting, the bombing, just as we'd expect as we enter now into this. We're entering back into, as I say, the arc of heaven, the point where souls can be liberated from a cycle of endless war and greed and the entrapments, the worst side of coming and incarnating on earth and being drawn into negative karma to keep you trapped here. And so when this door opens up to you, everything is done to wage war to stop you going through that door and leaving this plane, because these souls that exist and are trapped on this plane have been used to build realms for others that don't want to be in a third dimensional realm, a karmic realm. And so they take our experiences, they live off our negative experiences to build realms in other places. Just as you're building a high realm in, say, heaven or whatever you might want to call it, you know, it's so they were now desperately trying to plunge the whole thing down now, and everything that's happening in I was going to say Palestine, Gaza now is just the atrocities. You know, it was an amazing thing when when the International Court of Justice found Israel guilty of genocide. It was a fantastic day. I mean, not that they've got any power, but obviously Israel is inviting onto itself the very thing that is written in the Aquarian Gospel of Christ. It's saying exactly that they're going to be punished for this. That there's going to be a massive redemption that comes up, because all that's happening is that Britain, America and Israel are making worse and worse mistakes, being more and more aggressive, because we are really effectively still the Romans. This is what this is. This is Rome that's reinvented itself into a religious control and turned the teachings of Christ into a Roman blood sacrifice. And so they've just built the old ceremonies that existed before the days of Christianity, and they've just built that upon the story of Jesus, and they've turned the story into a blood sacrifice where Jesus supposedly died to cleanse you of your sins, and everything I've just read in that just says completely contradictory, is completely contradictory to that message. So there were the latest shots. Now we're going to, there's an incredible array of shots here to feast for your eyes, to actually see all the stuff that's come in over the years. And I make quite long videos, quite detailed about all that's going on. And so now what's going to go on is I'm going to run a narration through the whole new model, which is about 11 minutes long. And I'm going to, in the last aspect, I've got a load of my other videos lined up that I'll obviously edit some of this out to try and speed it all up a little bit, but just so you've got all the flybys there yourself, so you can go back to those flybys, consider where the planets were when you were born. And then for those who are following me up to this point, I also want you to go back 9 months to the time when you were conceived, when the soul contracts were drawn up and you all came together to this point of conception, which is a three-way. Conception is not a two-way thing, it's a three-way thing, because it's the two people who are coming together in love, and or certainly to bring about this point of fertilization. But this union of these, of this merging and this union, and then the entry point of this new soul that's going to come in, and when that contract's drawn up. So when you're thinking about your birth date, think about also your conception date, when that whole idea was conceived, and that moment was brought together. Hold on a second, someone's got the door. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think what I'm going to do is, because I've got to go out in a little bit, and a friend of mine's going out to a party, a friend who's got a boat down the way, and he's having his big birthday party, and I said I'd go along, and a friend's going to come around and cook some dinner, and everything's going to happen now. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the model, and I'm going to run it from here for you, and I'm going to put some of the shots over the top, and I'm going to put some excerpts from Laughing Gas up that I've recorded so far, which is, it's a pretty rough journey at the beginning. It's a fraught journey that leads to this place that where a psychic attack occurs because of a series of substances and abuse and everything else like that have opened up some dark holes to some dark places, and dark energy comes through, and for Dobbs, it's a point of midlife crisis, and everything's falling apart a little bit, and he's about to go off to the jungle to embark on a journey to understand what the hell's really going on, and to go on a journey which ultimately is going to be an experience of a death experience, and it reminds me so much. I've not just recently, like I say, I've been reading the Emerald tablets, Thoth's Emerald tablets, or certainly a channel translation of their meanings, and so bizarre that I wrote this book, and I seem to be hearing and reading the same story over that I've written in my own way, really telling the story of, in my own way, the story of the Tempest, and this crazy journey that I built for this time, as we enter into this time, as before the doorway finally closes, this grand doorway that's open to us finally closes, and so it will be an amazing thing to for you to come on that journey with me. I'm going to put it up on Patreon. The whole episode's up on Patreon for those who are members. If you want to go into the full journey, and if you want the PDF of it, just to do your own, just to read, or I'll leave you links for the book in the description, and and if you want a PDF of the book, just your own PDF, I'll just send that through to you. Just write to me in the comments, and leave your email in the comments, and I'll send you the PDF of the book. So if you can't afford to join me on Patreon, I will try and make it available on on a channel, so potentially I might be able to get some advertising, because I'm so broke at the moment. I've literally got nothing in the bank. So I'm going out with my mate tonight without a penny in the account. He's going to come and cook here. It's just like, but I'm just trying to see this as a positive thing, that I've got to try and get my stuff up and out there and do things, because I'm shadow banned on here. I'm shadow banned on Amazon. I'm shadow banned on Facebook. I'm shadow banned on Twitter. Most of my channels get shut down because I'm talking about stuff they don't want you to know about. And they want you to be in hate and war and aggression and blame and greed and frustration and divided. They want to break you in every way to lead you away from a peaceful, harmonious connection with the universe right now. And so I'm going to help doing my part, because the biggest thing, and this is what I really want you to understand more than anything else, I suppose, is that the reason that I started writing all this was that I saw my own death on a blast of laughing gas years ago, in about 2006, and which led me to writing Laughing Gas. And I saw the banks going down, and I saw the massive famines that came after the banks go down, as they prepare for war and they starve us into a point where they want us only. The war is our only option. Because we've just basically kicked all our dinner plates out of the door. We've aggressively pushed everyone away from us, and we've certainly in Britain we isolate ourselves so much that we bring harsh times upon ourselves, and that's unfolding now. Everything that I describe in Laughing Gas is now, you'd be like, oh my God, you could read it now and think, oh my God, it is literally happening. And but this is to be expected for this time. This is what this time brings about. There's as in the emerald tablets, in Thoth's emerald tablets, it says that the Earth has been invaded by the spawn of another sun, and that was, he charts his own escape. And so I'm going to run all of that. I'm going to run the chapter. You can watch that, and you can listen to you can see where the planets were when you were born, whilst I read out or put some of the readings of the audio version of Laughing Gas up, some of the excerpts that I've done so far over the top of that, and I'll put some of the relevant shots here and there over the top of that as well. So you have that. So hopefully I'm giving you lots as well, and like I say, if you join the Patreon, you can listen to all the episodes of Laughing Gas as I post them up. I've done about 3 so far, so I'm still, it's a work in progress, but that's what I'm gonna aim to deliver up to the 21st of June. So you can come with me on that big journey and start thinking about making a pilgrimage yourself to join that alignment, that time. The 21st of June, the sunrise on the 21st of June, and do your own process to align and to come to a place of peace and connectivity to the system that you're really in, and your place in the scheme of things, and your direction in the scheme of things. And so I'm going to do that. So I'm going to sound out here, and so we'll begin here. Right now is the beginning of running the timeline. And like I say, I'll put some shots over the top, and you'll get about 10 minutes. It's going to be about 10-15 minutes. And I hope that helps. I hope that helps for you to start thinking about where the planets were when you were conceived and when you arrived on the planet. And you might look at it to sort of, this is the beginning of the development of a whole new zodiac, but this is certainly the year of the dragon. We're entering now into the Chinese year of the dragon, and it's the big dragon there's going to be a big flyby. There's going to be a big flyby in August, September, and it's going to be, it's not going to be 61 volcanoes going off every year. Every year at that point, it's got exponentially bigger, and that seems to be the way things are going. And we haven't had the big flyby yet, the one that really blocks out the sun, the one that the fuss is all really about. And mathematically, it's very difficult to assume that it's not going to be any other time but August, September 2024, the biggest time. That's what it's looking like. And so that's what we're all gearing up for. That's what we're all going to prepare for. And we want to spiritually prepare for that. And so hopefully this will help you in that. And I will feel that what I saw in laughing gas, like I say, when I had that on a blast of laughing gas at Reading Rock, was a man going to no good place, and all my good intentions weren't directed to a good place because because I was affiliated with so much other stuff, thinking it was the right direction, but I was believing a load of old rubbish, really. I was believing that carbon dioxide is evil and is the bad thing, and clearly it's not. And if we're going to get ourselves out of here in terms of understanding a kind of like a viable kind of sustainable route, then we've got to be thinking of abundant clean energy. You know, that's the ace in the pack. Abundant clean energy. That's the ace in the pack that we all need to be really focusing on to change this world to be more sustainable. And much of that is not necessarily getting rid of our cars, but maybe looking after them, keeping them on the road much longer, and repairing them rather than renewing them, and slowly going and keeping our focus on sustainable energy sources, abundant clean energy sources like our sun. We can see it in the sky. We know that such a thing exists. Why can't we manifest this on this plane? It's because there's so much greed and so much corporate control and that we've got to move through. So hopefully we're going to get to that. So I hope you enjoy this little model, and I hope it kind of like helps to start the process of thinking about where the planets were when you arrived and when you were conceived. And enjoy the excerpt I'm going to give you of laughing gas. And if you'd like to get involved, you know, I'm going to be working with my patrons more and more, even though I'm not at the moment. I'm just trying to build some material and trying to get a bit of a plan together for you all. But it's coming, and I'm going to really try and give you something which is going to really help you in the process of coming to your own point of awakening and your own point of awareness to where you really are and what's really going on and what you want to be. So thank you so much. All the love in the world. I hope you enjoy it all, and take care until next time. Ciao. Scary similarities between now and the previous two times, which led to the First and the Second World Wars respectively. He's still pretty freaked out, and the irony of the book's title is by no means lost on him, but he tries to lose himself in its pages nonetheless. It seems to suggest that what is economically unfolding now is nothing more than a currency crisis propagated by war, disease, famine and terror, all funded by a credit machine out of control. There's nothing new in there for Dobbs really, but the research is thorough. It's a statistician's fanfare. It perplexes him to consider war as a viable business with today's military technology, however. The First World War started with cavalry and ended with tanks and bombers. The Second World War started with tanks and bombers, but ended with a nuclear bomb. It's not exactly hard to see where a Third World War would start, though God knows where it would end. In today's world, a so-called mini-nuke has the explosive force 10 times greater than the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, and they are listed by the Pentagon as safe for civilian use. The present-day equivalent of a Hiroshima-sized bomb is called a daisy car. Nobody really survives in the vicinity of one of those when they go off, as it's full of sharp shards of metal. But it's not nuclear, so it's considered a clean bomb. It's the most awesome nail bomb ever invented. In their blast radius, they cut everything to shreds. Everything. Thus explaining the cute little name that always makes Dobbs think of kids making daisy chains. How many daisy cutters have been dropped on Afghanistan and Iraq, along with all the depleted uranium bombshells? It's difficult to know. The first Iraq invasion was only supposed to last a year, but the bombing went on for over a decade before the next Iraq war officially started, where in 2003 alone, 240,000 tons of depleted uranium were deployed. The true figures have been heavily suppressed, but Dobbs had read in one blog that they could be as high as 40,000 times as much radioactive waste as was generated by the bomb dropped on Hiroshima, an estimate based on the unprecedented volume of birth defects, cancers and other diseases associated with radiation exposure reported since the invasion. It's obvious to him now the only way to stop a Third World War is simply not to start one. But how do you do that when it's never you or anybody you know who seems to beat the war drum? Who makes these choices? He thinks to himself. Is it really the voters? Are there normal people out there who don't directly profit from war actually voting for it? He's never met any himself. It torments him. His partner can't stand him talking about it. You're not a fucking economist, she screamed every time he raised the subject. For her it was all doom and gloom. Oh, and that other terrible word she hated hearing, conspiracy. Anyone who looks for answers for these questions encounters conspiracy theories within the first click of their web search. She hated them. Or maybe she just hated what they did to his head. He couldn't decide. It was as though she was policing his thoughts sometimes, but then it was becoming an obsession. He'd accepted that. Back to the present, Dobbs realises his mind is just awash with noisy interference. He feels hostility towards the Brigadier, as though he's entangled in his anger. He drops his book down on his lap for a moment and tries to feel the space beyond the anger, then hold himself there. Suddenly out of nowhere he remembers the Brigadier is a full-blown junkie at the moment. Had he somehow managed to forget that little nugget? That's the long and the short of it, and it has to be taken into account. He'd fully engaged with the antics of the previous night, and it's affected his judgment, he realises. He takes a breath, moving away from the bitterness, then gets up and walks over to the Brigadier's room. I think I'm going to get some fresh air, he says calmly. The Brigadier is sat on the bed, just staring and motionless at the ceiling. Dobbs doesn't linger, but instead wanders out of the room and up the iron spiral staircase leading to the roof, where Agent 6 is just standing, looking out over the city. He seems a little lost, and Dobbs guesses he's contemplating his problematic relationship with his girlfriend, which, despite the fact that it is full of confrontation, still seems to persist in their absence from each other in the form of endless text messages. It's consuming so much of his time, but as yet he's showing no sign of moving through the mess it's made of his head. He's clearly weighted down by it all. They spend an hour or so just listening to music through Agent 6's iPod and speaker system. Dobbs tries to make a little conversation, but his heart's not in the best state either. His own relationship back home is on the rocks as well, but right now he's just feeling total relief to have a break from it all. It's probably the pestilence come down that is battering Agent 6 more than anything else. Dobbs knows that it will pass, and soon, with the hot afternoon sun on their faces and the fresh air blowing in from the sea, it all starts to feel exciting again. After about an hour or so of this sunny vagueness, the sound of the Brigadier's saxophone can be heard floating up the spiral staircase, even though his presence still feels pretty wide. But as he sways and moves with the music as though manufacturing the tones in his very core, Dobbs can sense he's making a massive effort, and the old Brigadier is clearly coming through. Dobbs knows he's not a bad man. If anything, he's normally pretty caring. He remembered a time, not so many years before, when they'd been working at V Festival, and Dobbs had been dozing off under the sun in the early morning, recovering from the previous night's antics, neither really asleep nor awake. He'd been aware of the stragglers making their way back to their tents through his sleepy haze, and just then along came a big bloke who peered down the gap between the trucks where they were all lying. For some reason Dobbs had never found out. The man just turned